Mary's heart shattered. "No, James, please don't leave us," she begged, tears flowing freely. "We need you." Once upon a time, in a small village called Umwaga, there lived a beautiful young woman named Mary. Mary was kind-hearted and always ready to help others. She lived with her old grandmother, Neka, who had taken care of her since her parents passed away when she was very young. Mary was known for her beauty, and many young men in the village admired her. But Mary had not found anyone she truly loved, so she remained single. One day, as Mary was fetching water from the village stream, she met a handsome stranger. He was tall, with kind eyes and a warm smile. His name was James. James greeted Mary politely and offered to help her carry the heavy pot of water back to her grandmother's hut. Mary agreed, and they walked together, talking and laughing. James told Mary he was new to the village and was looking to settle down. He had a gentle and charming manner that made Mary feel comfortable and happy. Over the next few weeks, James and Mary spent more time together. They would go for long walks, talk about their dreams, and laugh at each other's jokes. James was very respectful towards Mary and her grandmother, and Neka quickly grew fond of him. It wasn't long before James asked Neka for Mary's hand in marriage. Neka saw how happy Mary was with James, so she agreed. The village celebrated their wedding with great joy. There was dancing, singing, and feasting. Everyone admired how perfect they looked together. Mary and James' love story seemed like a fairy tale come true. After their wedding, Mary and James moved into a small, cozy hut at the edge of the village. Their life together was peaceful and filled with happiness. Soon, Mary gave birth to a beautiful baby boy whom they named Obina. A year later, they welcomed a baby girl named Amara. Mary felt like the luckiest woman in the world. She had a loving husband, 2 wonderful children, and a happy home. James was a great father and husband. He always helped Mary with the children and made sure she had everything she needed. However, there was one strange thing about James: he never stayed out late at night. As soon as the sun set, James would insist on going inside and closing all the doors and windows. Mary found this odd, but she didn't question him too much. She thought he was just being cautious. One evening, after putting Obina and Amara to bed, Mary noticed James seemed anxious. He was pacing around the hut and kept looking outside. Mary walked up to him and asked, "James, is everything all right? You seem worried." James forced a smile and replied, "Yes, my love, everything is fine. I just have a lot on my mind. Please, go to bed. I will join you soon." Mary nodded and went to bed, but she couldn't sleep. She lay awake, thinking about James' strange behavior. Eventually, curiosity got the better of her. Mary quietly got out of bed and tiptoed to the window. She peeked outside and saw James standing under the moonlight, looking up at the sky. Suddenly, James began to glow. His body became transparent, and Mary could see right through him. Mary's heart raced with fear and confusion. She couldn't believe her eyes. Her husband was a ghost. Mary quickly went back to bed and pretended to be asleep. James came inside a little while later and lay down beside her. Mary stayed still, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know what to do or who to talk to about what she had seen. The next morning, Mary decided to visit Nneka. She needed to tell her grandmother about James. When Mary arrived at Nneka's hut, she found her sitting outside, weaving a basket. Mary sat down beside her and said, "Nneka, I need to talk to you about something very important." Nneka looked at Mary with concern and replied, "What is it, my child? You look troubled." Mary took a deep breath and told Nneka everything she had seen the night before. Nneka listened carefully, her face growing more serious with each word. When Mary finished, Nneka took her hand and said, "My dear Mary, what you have told me is very troubling. We need to find out more about James. There is a wise old man in the next village named Baba Olisa. He knows many things about the spirit world. We should go and see him." Mary agreed, and they set off to the next village. When they arrived at Baba Olisa's hut, they found him sitting outside, surrounded by herbs and strange objects. Baba Olisa welcomed them and asked how he could help. Mary nervously explained her situation, and Baba Olisa listened intently. After a moment of silence, he said, "Mary, it seems that your husband is indeed a spirit. There are many spirits who can take human form and live among us. Some are good, and some are not. We need to find out why James is here and what he wants." Baba Olisa performed a ritual to call upon the spirits and seek their guidance. After some time, he looked at Mary and said, "James is a wandering spirit who fell in love with you. He means you no harm, but he cannot stay in the human world forever. The bond between a human and a spirit is delicate and can bring great trouble if not handled properly." Mary's heart sank. She loved James and couldn't bear the thought of losing him. "Baba Olisa, what can I do? I love James, and we have children together. Is there any way for us to be together?" Baba Olisa thought for a moment and then said, "There is a way, but it is very dangerous. You must perform a special ceremony to bind James' spirit to the human world. But be warned, if anything goes wrong, it could bring great harm to both you and James." Mary was determined to do whatever it took to keep her family together. She agreed to perform the ceremony, and Baba Olisa gave her the instructions and the items she needed. He warned her to be very careful and to follow the instructions exactly. Mary returned home with Nneka, and they prepared for the ceremony. That night, after the children were asleep, Mary told James what she had learned. James was shocked and saddened that his secret had been discovered, but he agreed to the ceremony. He loved Mary and wanted to stay with her and their children. The ceremony was complex and required Mary to recite ancient words and perform specific actions. As she began, James' form started to glow and become transparent again. Mary's heart raced, but she continued, determined to save her family. Suddenly, a strong wind blew through the hut, and the candles went out. Mary could hear strange whispers all around her. She felt a cold hand touch her shoulder, and she almost lost her concentration. But she remembered Baba Olisa's warning and kept going. Just as Mary was about to complete the ceremony, a dark shadow appeared in the room. It was a menacing spirit, angry that Mary was trying to bind James to the human world. The spirit lunged at Mary, but James stepped in front of her to protect her. The shadow and James struggled, and the room was filled with flashes of light and darkness. Mary screamed, "James, please don't leave me. Stay with us." With a final burst of energy, James pushed the dark spirit away and completed the ceremony. The room fell silent, and the shadows disappeared. James collapsed to the floor, his body still glowing faintly. Mary rushed to his side and held him tightly. "James, please be okay," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. James slowly opened his eyes and smiled weakly. "Mary, my love, I am still here. But I am not sure for how long. The bond between our worlds is fragile." Mary nodded, her heart heavy with worry. She helped James to his feet, and they sat together, holding each other tightly. They knew their love was strong, but they also knew their future was uncertain. Days turned into weeks, and life seemed to return to normal in the village. Mary and James did their best to keep their secret hidden and to protect their children from any harm. But Mary always remembered Baba Olisa's warning and knew they had to be careful. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned a deep shade of orange, Mary sat outside with James, watching Obinna and Amara play. She looked at her husband and said, "No matter what happens, I will always love you. We will face whatever comes together." James smiled and kissed her forehead. "I love you too, Mary. We will protect our family and keep our love strong." And so, they lived each day with hope and love, cherishing every moment they had together. But deep down, Mary knew their story was far from over, and many challenges still lay ahead. Days turned into months, and months into years. Despite the lingering fears and uncertainties, Mary and James managed to create a happy and loving home for their children. Obinna and Amara grew up healthy and strong, unaware of their father's true nature. Mary and James cherished every moment they had together, but a dark cloud always hung over them, a constant reminder of their fragile reality. One stormy night, as lightning flashed across the sky and thunder rumbled in the distance, a sense of foreboding filled the air. Mary couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling that something terrible was about to happen. She glanced at James, who was sitting by the fire reading a story to Obinna and Amara. His face was tense, his eyes flickering with the glow of the flames. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the hut, and the door burst open. A chilling wind swept inside, extinguishing the fire and plunging the room into darkness. Mary grabbed her children and held them close. "James, what's happening?" she cried. Before James could respond, a dark figure appeared in the doorway. It was the menacing spirit that had tried to stop the ceremony years ago. Its eyes glowed with malice, and it floated menacingly towards them. "James," the spirit hissed, "you do not belong in this world. It is time for you to return to where you came from." James stood protectively in front of his family. "Leave us alone," he shouted. "We have done nothing to harm you." The spirit laughed cruelly. "You defied the laws of nature by binding yourself to this world. Now, you must pay the price." The spirit lunged at James, and a fierce struggle ensued. Mary watched in horror as the two spirits clashed, their forms glowing and flickering. She knew she had to do something to protect her family. Desperately, she ran to the cupboard and retrieved the items Baba Olisa had given her years ago. With trembling hands, Mary began to recite the ancient words of protection. The room filled with a blinding light, and the spirit screamed in rage. But it was too powerful, then Mary's words seemed to have little effect. Just as the spirit was about to overpower James, Obinna stepped forward. "Papa, let me help you," he cried, his small voice filled with determination. He reached out his hand, and to Mary's amazement, his touch seemed to strengthen James. James looked at his son with pride. "Obinna, my brave boy, you have a strong spirit," he said. "Together, we can defeat this evil." With renewed strength, James and Obinna fought the dark spirit. The room shook with the force of their battle, and Mary held Amara tightly, shielding her from the chaos. Finally, with a powerful burst of light, James and Obinna managed to banish the dark spirit, which disappeared with a terrifying scream. The room fell silent, and the glowing light slowly faded. James, exhausted and weakened, collapsed to the floor. Obinna rushed to his side, tears streaming down his face. "Papa, are you okay?" he asked. James smiled weakly. "Obinna, you were so brave. I am so proud of you," he whispered. Then, turning to Mary, he said, "My love, I fear my time here is coming to an end. The bond we created is breaking. I cannot stay much longer." Mary's heart shattered. "No, James, please don't leave us," she begged, tears flowing freely. "We need you." James gently touched her face. "I will always be with you in spirit, Mary. Our love will never die. Take care of our children and tell them about me. I love you all so much." With those final words, James's form began to fade. Mary clung to him, sobbing, as he slowly disappeared into the ether. Obinna and Amara watched in silent grief as their father vanished, leaving behind only a faint, glowing light that soon dimmed and disappeared. The heart was eerily quiet. Mary held her children close, their tears mingling with her own. They stayed like that for a long time, mourning the loss of their beloved James. Days passed, and the village mourned with Mary and her family. The story of James's sacrifice spread, and people spoke of his bravery and love. Mary did her best to stay strong for Obinna and Amara, telling them stories of their father and the love they shared. Though the pain of losing James was immense, Mary knew she had to keep living for her children. She taught them the values their father had cherished: kindness, bravery, and love. Obinna and Amara grew up knowing their father's spirit was always with them, guiding and protecting them. Moral lesson. The tale of Mary and James teaches us several important lessons. 1. Acceptance and letting go. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, we cannot change certain realities. Mary had to accept that James could not stay with them forever. Letting go of a loved one is painful, but remembering and honoring their memory can bring strength and comfort. 2. The endurance of spirit. Though James could not remain in the human world, his spirit continued to watch over his family. This reminds us that the essence of those we love never truly leaves us, and their influence can continue to guide us even after they are gone.